Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're joining us today because we're jumping straight into a topic that so many Australians hear about but kind of struggle to fully wrap their heads around. We're talking about self-managed superannuation funds, or as you'll usually hear them called, SMSFs. But more specifically, we're going to unpack what it actually means to be a trustee of one of these funds. I know, it's a title that sounds incredibly official, but what does that actually look like in the real world? Well, let's find out. To really get to the heart of this, let's start with a situation you might find pretty relatable. Picture Olivia and Ben. They're an everyday Australian couple in their early 40s, and they're spending their Saturday morning doing what we've all done at some point, helping friends move house. So there they are, surrounded by endless cardboard boxes, finally taking a well-earned coffee break. During the chat, one of their friends casually drops into conversation, "We actually have an SMSF." Ben, leaning on the kitchen counter, replies curiously, I hear that term all the time, but I've never really understood who's actually involved in running it." His friend just smiles, takes a sip of coffee, and says, "Well, we're the trustees." Fast forward a few hours, the boxes are finally moved, and Olivia and Ben are on the drive home. The conversation from that morning has clearly been taking over in Olivia's mind. She looks over at Ben and asks, "Hang on, what exactly does being a trustee mean? It sounded really important." Ben nods thoughtfully and replies, "Yeah, it sounds like when you're a trustee, there's actual responsibility involved." Olivia adds, "I'm guessing it has something to do with making decisions for the fund?"
Olivia and Ben's conversation is exactly where so many everyday Australians find themselves. We hear terms like trustee thrown around at barbecues, on the news, but the actual mechanics of the role remain a bit of a mystery. Ben's curiosity hit the nail on the head. Who is actually involved and what on earth are they doing? So let's use their question to bridge into a really simple, jargon-free explanation. What exactly are we talking about when we say SMSF trustee? In the simplest possible terms, a trustee is a person, or sometimes a company, that holds the ultimate responsibility for how the superannuation fund operates and how it is managed. And this is the absolutely crucial point here. Having an SMSF is not simply having a different super account where some invisible team does all the heavy lifting behind the scenes. When you become a trustee, you are stepping up to be actively involved. You hold the assets in trust for the members, which in an SMSF is usually you and your family, and you take on real legal obligations for how that fund is run. I always like to think of this as a fundamental shift in how you travel toward your retirement. Think about it. If you're in a standard retail or industry super fund, you're essentially a passenger on a massive cruise ship. You get to choose your destination. Maybe you pick a high growth or a balanced investment option, but the captain and the crew are the ones actually navigating the ship, keeping the engines running and making sure it complies with maritime law. But when you establish an SMSF and become a trustee, you are moving from passenger to captain of your own ship. You get the flexibility to steer exactly where you want to go, but you also take on the real administrative and compliance responsibilities of making sure your ship stays afloat and follows the rules of the sea. Section 1. The real responsibilities. More than just an account. So now that you're the captain, what does the practical reality of being a trustee actually look like on a day-to-day or year-to-year basis? Well, your duties are clearly defined by law. First up, you have to formulate, regularly review, and actually give effect to an investment strategy. You can't just buy assets on a whim. It has to be a considered strategy that looks at risk, return, and diversification for the fund members. Second, you've got to maintain strict fund records. Everything from trustee meeting minutes to accounting records needs to be kept up to date and retained safely, sometimes for up to a decade. Third, you must arrange for an annual audit by an approved professional. And finally, you're responsible for paying out benefits, like pensions or lump sums, strictly according to the superannuation rules. It's real work, and it definitely requires diligence. But when you break it down like this, it's just a clear checklist of duties, rather than some intimidating unknown. Now, if there's one golden rule that governs absolutely everything a trustee does, it is this: the sole purpose test. This brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy of superannuation in Australia. As a trustee, every single decision you make and every asset you buy must be solely for the purpose of providing retirement benefits to the members or to their dependents if they pass away. That is it. You cannot use the funds to get a present-day personal perk. You can't buy a holiday house for your SMSF and spend your summers there. You definitely can't buy artwork with fund money and hang it in your personal living room. The fund's assets must be completely separate and maintained strictly for your retirement. Because providing for retirement is such a vital pillar of the Australian economy, the regulators take this role very seriously. And realistically, that means there are strict rules and real consequences if trustees don't manage their fund correctly.
If a trustee breaches the rules, for instance, by treating fund money as their own personal bank account, there can be significant administrative penalties. These are personal monetary fines that cannot be paid using the superfund's money. They actually come out of the trustee's own pocket. In severe cases, a person can even be disqualified from ever being a trustee again. Now, we're sharing this not to be alarmist, but to neutrally highlight exactly why understanding your responsibilities before jumping into an SMSF matters so much. Section 2. The framework. 2 common trustee structures.
So, knowing the duties and the strict rules, how do everyday Australians actually set this up legally? Well, when establishing an SMSF, you basically have 2 choices for who or what acts as the trustee. The first option is individual trustees. This is exactly what it sounds like. It's where the members of the fund act as the trustees themselves, as individuals. Generally, you need at least 2 individuals to do this. The second option is a corporate trustee. This involves setting up a registered company to act as the trustee of the SMSF. In this setup, the company itself holds the legal responsibility, and the members of the superfund act as the directors of that company.
Now, while individual trustees might seem simpler at first glance, a significant majority of SMSFs actually opt for a corporate trustee, and the source material highlights some very practical reasons why. Firstly, asset ownership. With a corporate trustee, all the fund's assets are recorded in the name of the company. This creates a really clean separation between your personal assets and your super assets. Secondly, changing members. If a member joins or leaves the fund or tragically passes away, a corporate trustee makes the paperwork so much easier. The company just continues to own the assets. You only have to change the directors. If you had individual trustees instead, you'd have to legally change the ownership names on every single asset the fund owns, from bank accounts right through to property titles. And finally, lifespan. A company has an indefinite lifespan, which brings a lot of certainty and stability to the control of the fund over the long term. I know we've covered a lot of ground today, from strict compliance rules and sole purpose tests right through to corporate structures. It can definitely feel like a heavy mantle to take on. But here is the most reassuring part of this whole explainer. You do not have to navigate this alone. While the ultimate responsibility always rests with the trustee, smart captains know exactly when to bring expert navigators onto the bridge. And that naturally brings us to the professionals who help manage this every single day. Wendy Super Accounting specializes in SMSFs, handling the intricate accounting and compliance requirements that we've discussed today. Having the right team by your side is how everyday Australians can confidently manage their trustee duties. It ensures you meet all those regulatory requirements while expertly avoiding unnecessary mistakes and those administrative headaches we mentioned earlier. Which leads us to our final thought for today's explainer. We started out with Olivia and Ben wondering what it really means to be an SMSF trustee. We now know it's about shifting from passenger to captain, fully embracing the sole purpose test, and managing strict legal and financial duties. So the most important question to ask yourself before making assumptions or jumping into an SMSF isn't just about what investments you want to make. It's actually this. Are you ready for the responsibility that comes with being a trustee? This content is general and educational only. It is not financial advice. If you already have an SMSF or would like to better understand your compliance responsibilities, speak with the Wendy Super Accounting team.